Hello and welcome back, and today I want to continue my look at comparing NAS brands, because so many of you out there have entered into 2019 and gone, right, I'm sick of DropBox, I'm sick of Google Drive, I'm sick of online storage, and I want to get my own NAS, my own private cloud. And you've done all this research, and then suddenly you find out that despite all of your hard work and research, there's about 10 bloody brands out there telling you their brand is best. So throughout this year, what I'm going to be trying to do is comparing all of the individual brands. I'm going to have my same 4 pillars that I use for order comparisons: price, software, hardware, and support services. And I'm hoping to help you discover which one's best for you. Remember, I'm not trying to work out which is best, because no NAS brand is best. One will always have an advantage over another. It's for you to decide which one has the right features and facilities for you. So today I want to look at Synology and Drobo. These are 2 NAS brands that are massive among photo and video editors. You can't really get away with them in many regards. They're everywhere. These are 2 NAS brands that, you know, particularly for people out there that are looking for like a nice, safe storage area for lots of photos and videos. You're told, oh, you need to get one of Synology or Drobo and get it in a RAID 5 or a RAID 6, and that way you can store all your photos and back them up and edit them and blah blah blah. These 2 brands have done such a good job to put themselves in front of Mac users that this has by proxy made them incredibly attractive to photo and video editors. And now these 2 brands have got a slick, kind of easy, user-friendly, great user interface, GUI, graphical user interface, kind of message put out there. So all too often you're trying to decide which is best. Now you'll be pleased to hear that there actually is a better one between them, and I'm telling you right now, it's Synology. I wouldn't normally in a video straight flat out say one brand is better than the other, but in this case I will, and if for the following reasons I'm going to talk to you about. So without further ado, let's compare them. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about price, because Synology and Drobo have a very similar pricing structure, although there are far many more different kinds of Synology. They range from a very cost-effective little 1 bay that comes in a couple of different kinds of hardware options that scale up to a 2 bay. So by bays I mean hard drives or SSD per bay. So 2 and 4, 5, 8, 12 bay, 24 bay, just enormous boxes. Drobo have got a far narrower range, and I know a number of you out there are probably going to quite like that because it simplifies the choice. They've only got about 4, maybe 5 different kinds of NAS. I'm not even sure they have that, given that some of the NAS devices in their range are a few years old. But let's say there's 3. Okay, there's a 5 bay, an 8 bay, and there's like another kind of quasi 5 bay as well, but we're going to ignore that one. We're just going to look at the main 2, 5 and the 8 bay there. Now, their 5 bay, the 52N, is a 5 bay Drobo's 5 bay NAS solution. It's got a quad core ARM based CPU inside. It's got a couple of gig of memory, and it supports not so much RAID 5 or RAID 6, but their own RAID system called Beyond RAID. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on in the software section. But theirs is a very sleek metal chassis with lots of LEDs there on the front that are quite intelligent, I've got to say. I'll talk about that later on as well. And within their range, that device retails, I think, for about 550 quid, depending on where you buy it from. That is not a cheap 5 bay. Synology, on the other hand, have got a 2 bay called 718 Plus. It's about 300 odd nicker, and it's got the 918, their 4 bay with SSD cache bays built into it. Both of these devices do, and that device is about 450, 500, depending on where you shop around. So in terms of price, the Synology is already cheaper, but moreover, the Synology has a far greater range for you in terms of hardware, whereas the Drobo kind of says it's this or nothing. It doesn't want you to be interested in hardware. They want to talk about software that we'll talk about in a bit. But in terms of value and the price, Synology just give you more, not just for the range, but what it can do. I mean, the number of bays, the SSD caching, and the hardware you get inside, you end up paying significantly less for the hardware inside. And you don't even need to be very experienced or knowledgeable about PC hardware to select the Synology. They both are just as supported by Mac and indeed Windows environments as each other. So setting one up or the other one up, they're very similar to set up, and what they give you is very similar at the start as a base level. The minute you're using the device more, the hardware will suffer onto the Drobo. So in terms of value for money and what you get for your money, the Synology is significantly higher, as long as you go at least an Intel-based CPU. After that, a little bit of a grey area. So, which brings us, although I've already alluded to it a bunch of times, hardware. Now in terms of hardware, these two devices are a little different. The Synology range, pretty much across the entire range, gives you better hardware. Not just for the price, but just better. They have Pentium CPUs, they have Celeron CPUs, they've got bloody Xeon CPUs, they've even got some very, very high quality and modern Realtek ARM CPUs. With those CPUs, Synology has 2, 4, 8, 16 gig of memory across their different devices, and a better selection of ports and access. The Drobo, on the other hand, only arrives across those two devices with Realtek ARM-based CPUs. There's no Intel or x86 chips, which are far more powerful and efficient with a better floating point. And on top of that, their chassis, there are features that are quite nice hardware-wise, such as the internal SSD cache slot, although a number of Synologies now have at least 2 SSD cache slots, and they're NVMe as well, so faster and more SSD cache options. But the Drobo has an internal battery. That's quite nice. So if the device gets switched off for some reason in the midst of a read-write operation, then the device will either flush the cache or end the read-write operation safely, because there's an internal battery that will power the device long enough to safely sever those operations. But that battery does not justify missing out on what the Synology gives you. The Synology gives you better SSD cache options, better software that we'll talk about in a little bit, far, far better CPU hardware, and although it doesn't have the battery option, you've got link aggregation, and the money you'd save, you could buy a little cheap UPS to run next to it. On top of that, the Drobo arrives with that great LED light system there built into the front, and that LED light system on the front of the chassis, you can pull this little thing off the front, and that tells you that you can, different LED light combinations result in better, result in different actions within the device. And indeed, if one of those is a red light and one of the drives dies, it will recover that drive quicker than the Synology. That is true. The Drobo's recovery system is better, and the ability to read from those remaining drives is better. But it's not enough, given that the Synology gives you all of that hardware and very, very close to what's already existing in terms of performance in the event of a failure, and still being at a lower price point with, I think, a better chassis, because the Drobo has been using the same chassis for a long time. It's heavy, it uses more power, it's got a bigger fan on the rear. It's just, in terms of hardware, the Synology wins it for me, which brings me to software, because in terms of software, again, Synology dominate. They are, in terms of NAS and all the NAS brands, the most innovative software vendors for NAS out there, in terms of first and third party, with surveillance options, alternatives to Google Drive for docs and Excel and PowerPoint and stuff like that, better calendar application, communication with Synology Chat, active backup server, that surveillance app I just mentioned, surveillance station, enormously great, VM software for virtualization, and more. These are just a few of the apps, while also supporting Plex, iTunes, iTunes server, and more, the LNA media server, the works, all built in. All these apps are free. I'll say free, you buy your Synology and they're included. Drobo barely has any, and that includes mobile apps as well. The Synology arrives with a huge number of mobile apps. The Drobo has 2, and one of them's Duff. On top of that, although it supports Plex, it doesn't support Plex transcoding, and DLNA media support is limited at best. And it doesn't have its own software for virtualization, a VM. It doesn't have surveillance applications. It doesn't have office applications, and relies almost 90% of the time on third-party apps on your local machines, which, if you're fine with, great, and you're treating the NAS as just some random map network storage, great, but then why pay extra for something for basic tasks, something that Synology can already do to the same level and include a great deal more for a lower price? And that's why, in terms of software and warranty, The Synology is better. There's a number of 3 and 5 year warranty options from Synology, whereas Drobo have a few 3 year options, and if you want longer, you have to pay. You have to pay extra for those longer warranties, something that's very disappointing. Which brings me to the last point, service and support. Now, this is a mixed bag, really, because the Synology, a lot of them do arrive with 2, 3 and 5 year warranty options, as well as the advanced replacement on XS series and business class models, and the Synology Premium service, which has got like a 24/7 phone line and live chat, stuff like that. Whereas Drobo has a number of these extra features, but you have to pay for them in software packs and support packs, and they've really kind of enterprise-led and kind of really squeeze the pounds out of this. I don't dislike Drobo. I think it's a very robust storage device. But what I will say is once you compare it to something like Synology, there is no reason to go for a Drobo. The Drobo is a nice looking device, and if you've had one before, you're probably used to it. It's very user-friendly, set up and forget. But beyond mapped network storage or easy storage, it's better to go for a Synology. They've got 10 GB options as well, something Drobo still doesn't give you, which is infuriating, given that even the newest generation of Macs are arriving with 10 gigabit Ethernet. Synology have been supporting this, not as much as some, I'm looking at you, QNAP, but still very well. Drobo have kind of looked at this and for the most part gone, nah, you're alright. And that's why I'm disappointed with Drobo, and why, for me, if you're looking at these two brands, whereas in most of my comparisons I will say one of these is right for you, and these videos are meant to help you make a choice, I'm telling you, right now, in 2019, as it stands, don't bother with a Drobo, unless they release something new and good, like a new 8-bay, that's great. But apart from that, go for the Synology, it's just a better one overall. That said, Thunderbolt storage, Drobo, great little RAID storage, 5D3, yum yum. But apart from that, in terms of NAS, if you're looking at Synology versus Drobo, save your money or put it into storage and go for a Synology NAS. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Do remember, if you've enjoyed it, click like and subscribe. This channel doesn't have Patreon and a donation service. This YouTube channel is based on helping you. It's not like the other YouTube channel, Span TV. This is just to help you, so I've got to get those likes and subscribes to keep this channel moving. And don't forget, if you're looking at a right network attached storage solution, go into the comments to the free advice section on NAS Compares. I'm not going to tell you it's a fast option, but I will tell you that within a day or so, you will get a solution to your storage problems, and they're there to help you. I say they, it's myself and a colleague. So do let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.